Avowed is not Skyrim.
Hey, turn around and sail back to wherever you came from. This dock is reserved for the Imperial Envoy. And he's late. Huh, probably died at sea. Good riddance. Wait, you're the... fuck.
Nice.
It doesn't have the same sprawling infinite open world or the interactivity. But the lack of Skyrim is actually part of what makes Avowed feel so good to me. A more condensed and focused story that so far is delivering. So you see, Avowed doesn't actually hit on everything that it's trying to do. There's some definite misses in this game so far, but the hits that it does land, the things that it does really well, at least for me in this first impression, really make up for those misses. Avowed so far has been a fantastic, addicting RPG experience, an action-oriented first-person RPG adventure with meaningful storytelling, solid dialogue, fantastic combat, and a beautiful world to explore. It's not perfect, but as you'll see in this first impressions, there's a whole lot to love about it. And yes, I do know that I said first person because while there is a third person mode in this game, it's a first person RPG. The third person is just kind of a fun little gimmick. This first impression will be spoiler free. We're not going to go into any really big story details on this. It's more about the game itself, the gameplay and everything like that. But there may be some visual spoilers, some minor visual spoilers in here. So just be warned that that might happen. You might be able to piece things together from little locations and stuff like that. But this is mostly 99.9% spoiler free, I hope. Avowed is an RPG in the strictest sense that has a story to tell and will whisk you along for a ride where your choices matter. Shattering enemies you've frozen solid is cool, and jumping off of things to escape hordes of lizardmen doesn't always go as planned. Stuff like that happens more often than I want to admit in this game to me. But at least I have companions to watch me do stuff like this, because Avowed is a companion action RPG from Obsidian, the makers of the Pillars of Eternity series, the IP in which this game is based, and one that I have not actually played, though I do have it. It is part of that ever expanding to be played list for me. Obsidian also made Outer Worlds, the sci-fi adventure that might actually also be launching a sequel later this year. Not to be confused with the other sci-fi game, Outer Wilds, which left me, it did this to me after playing that game. Oh. Trust me, go play Outer Wilds if you haven't already. Just avoid every single spoiler. You cannot know spoilers for that game because it's a single play game. But back to Avowed. When I say that Avowed is not Skyrim in the bad way, which I want to get out of the way early on in this first impression, it's stuff like this. and stuff like this. That lack of interactivity, that lack of reaction is one of the things that you will notice throughout the game, which I think is the biggest thing that makes it not feel like Skyrim. Although you could say that the good side of that, the biggest thing that makes it not feel like Skyrim, are companions and quests that feel much more personal and matter much more. At least that's why I personally like it more than Skyrim. In that sense, not overall. You see, Avowed has more than made up for some of its shortcomings with a strong story, good dialogue, engaging companions, and a beautiful world that in thrilling, exciting combat. But if you're looking for a game that is more like Skyrim, wait till the end of this video because I have a recommendation for you. Avowed is a visually stunning game made in Unreal Engine. And because it's an Unreal Engine, it does kind of carry that signature Unreal Engine blur, kind of giving it a slightly filtered look at times, especially on hair, but it's still a gorgeous game, especially the landscapes. But these graphics are also helped by fantastic animations utilized in its standout combat, a classes system where you can build your own class, offering a dynamic mix of skills like freezing enemies and shattering them to pieces, backstabbing from the shadows, or lobbing fireballs between big two-hander swings. Now, I do think it is important for me to reiterate here that I have not played the Pillars of Eternity game, so I'm coming into this as perhaps the target audience in a lot of ways. The audience that they're trying to cultivate a new audience for this IP. People that are unfamiliar. So I get to experience all of this gorgeous, beautiful world and the world lore, the very, very incredibly deep world lore with tons and tons of lore books throughout the game so far. For the first time, I get to see all these intriguing new, like awesome playable races, all these new political factions, these new things that I wasn't aware of, and also lament the fact that for character select, we have perhaps the most boring playable races that this IP could have picked by going with a human or an elf. Yes, you're a godlike, which adds a whole thing to it, which makes it more interesting. But there's so many freaking cool playable races in this IP, and you get to be human or elf. So that's a downer. But thankfully, you do get many of those awesome characters as your companions. On the other side, I do hope that players coming into this from a Pillars of Eternity get to see their beloved IP in a new way and find that visiting the familiar world but from a new perspective is rewarding. And I think that helps with the writing in the game itself being very solid. The dialogue especially shines with optional text explanations that avoid heavy-handed exposition. It's a feature that I wish more games would use, as it allows you as the player to kind of use a glossary of terminology rather than having NPCs explain everything in a tell rather than show. If you understand the words or you understand the context, you can just keep going. But if you want more information, you have this little handy glossary in every little dialogue. And the dialogue itself, it balances humor.
He's not too far gone. I think we can help him.
I'm not ready. I've never even touched a girl. It's not fair.
With serious moments.
Look, I'll no thank you for showing basic decency. But you saved my life. That counts for something. To me, anyway. Aye, don't push our luck. Try not to get killed. Nah, I'm kidding. Just don't go around acting like you own the place, alright? Not all of them, but it's not a great way to make friends. Give Paradisans a chance. That's why they came here in the first place. Hope we don't run into each other. Still, take care of yourself.
though I do have to point out that it does occasionally veer into Marvel-esque quips. And there's also, in a weird, in some ways, an uncanny valley thing with some of their mouths they're very expressive when they speak, but then other times it looks completely great and normal. Like, it's the cinematics of the dialogue are a little uneven. Some of them are fantastic, and other ones they could use a little tightening up. The story kicks off with an interesting mystery that's helped along by the addition of compelling companions like Kai, who add depth to the experience with camp interactions and banter, though not all companions feel quite as fleshed out or as intriguing as Fish Garrus.
Of course I can. Are you a wizard as well? Remarkable. An Addiran godlike wizard. You're nearly as fascinating as this godless face. But I'd best pack up. I want to get home. I've a new artifact to study. Thank you for your help, godlike. Even if you didn't have a ladder.
Well, that's something I hope never happens again.
I've got a few inches to spare if she changes her mind.
Yes, if for some reason you don't know yet, Kai is voiced by Garrus. They are Fish Garrus. And unfortunately, no, you cannot romance Fish Garrus. You also can't equip Fish Garrus. You cannot give them a sword. So I guess in general, you can't play with their sword. Now, when I was talking before about this not being Skyrim and not being a very interactive world, I don't want to make it seem like there's no interactivity. There's, like spider webs that you can burn. There's grates you can freeze to go into. There's a whole lot of traversal and exploration. And there's chests that have unique loot just hidden around the world. So there is interactivity. It's just not to the same level of a Baldur's Gate 3 or a Skyrim. Or Kingdom Come Deliverance. This is a curated narrative experience, not an open world sandbox. And at times, this can make parts of the world feel kind of dead, especially when NPCs take no notice of you or have nothing to say and just kind of stare off into the distance. But there are also NPCs that you come across that are very interesting and intriguing. There are scenes that you come across, like you will come across murder scenes. That's not necessarily a spoiler because there's murder scenes and you will walk upon them. There are things you just experience from just going through the game. Side quests range from simple to deeply meaningful, with missable details that reward exploration, like unique armor or notes that are just like little flavor text notes referencing past choices, though these are kind of few and far between. Traversal mechanics such as using spells to create ice bridges or jumping and climbing all around add fun, but at times don't feel as fully fleshed out as they could be. Like, for example, the ice being just the exact same ice model. Avowed is an accessible RPG with fast travel, quest markers, and adjustable difficulty, making it easier to play but potentially less challenging for hardcore fans. While it lacks the friction of more hardcore RPGs, its strengths lie in the engaging story, rewarding exploration, and the frenetic and exciting combat that has a satisfying crunch. If you're looking for a narrative-driven action RPG with a mix of humor, intrigue, and player choice, Avowed delivers. Don't expect a living, breathing open world where you'll be sent to prison for stealing a wheel of cheese. You can in fact steal things directly from people and they will not care at all. Except when you steal from a donation plate.
We don't have a gift bearer at this temple. But if you'd like, you can leave your burdens here. Very bold of you to take the burdens of others. I hope they serve you well.
I would have done that in Skyrim too, to be honest. Avowed has been overall pretty freaking addicting. I've spent more time and lost more sleep since its release than an RPG in quite some time. I'm really into this game. I'm really enjoying my time in this game, and I hope you will too. It's not perfect, and there's certainly things I would change, like adding in more companion customization, for example. But there's just so much good too. The combat feels great. It's really just been a ton of fun to play so far, and I haven't wanted to stop playing. The story is good enough that I want to see what happens next. I have so many unanswered questions that I really want to find out what's going to happen. And I'm starting to get more and more invested in the story of Kai. I'm still coming around to some of the other companions, but I'm really invested in Kai's story now. I feel like I'm building up to some big climax where I'm really kind of crafting a narrative around the choices I've been making, where it's kind of keeping track of those individual choices. And it's been very interesting watching my friend Bibiansky play, who's been streaming the game, and seeing that they're making different choices than I did. And so I really want to see how different our endings are going to be, because it's already been confirmed that there are different endings for this game. And I have a feeling my ending might end up being better than his. At least less evil, maybe. One more thing that I want to point out is on the subject of those choices, in dialogue, there seems to be a very clear, multiple ways to go around lots of different dialogues and conversations you have with NPCs. Usually it's the very, very violent way and just being, you know, murder, or it's the more diplomatic way. And I've actually seen, because I've been going the diplomatic way in almost every single way. I've been rude a couple of times, I'll admit, but I've been going the diplomatic way and the altruistic way, we'll say. And sometimes that's been coming back and seeing some of those responses and seeing some of those characters that I chose to spare or chose to talk to instead of fight or murder has been an interesting thing. It's not all of them, but seeing them come back has been interesting in a good way, a very good way. And I hope that continues and gets even more present as the game goes on. Avowed has all the hallmarks of a very solid RPG, a very good Obsidian RPG. But if you're looking for something more Skyrim, because I know this aesthetic of this game is going to attract people who are looking and waiting for Elder Scrolls 6 and sad that they don't have it. Well, there's a non-AAA game that I want to recommend to you called Tainted Grail. Now, it is still in early access, and again, it is not AAA. It's gonna be, you know, it's not going to be as expansive as a Skyrim. It doesn't have the same budget, but Tainted Grail has actually been one of those games where playing it evoked the feelings of Skyrim for me more than other games have in recent memory. So if you want to check out more about Tainted Grail, the Arthurian magical legend, you can find that in this one right here, this video right here. I mean, who doesn't want to go and experience some Arthurian legends after all? It's a pretty dark and gritty, and there's a whole lot of ability to go out and explore, and you 100% get in trouble for stealing and get sent to prison and then end up maybe having to murder your way through the guards. If you're looking for a narrative driven